Thank you, Antonia. Welcome everyone again to our Foundations in Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court Coordination. We're going to start with our final module today, and we'll focus on developing and solidifying partnerships to support Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court operations. If we can go on to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about our disclaimer. The opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Justice. Go on to the next slide, please. We'll introduce our guests today. So we're going to switch it up and have more of an informal dialogue with our peer mentors. Dave McArthur and Chaniel Grant, both are coordinators for their respective communities. Dave's up in White Earth in Minnesota. He's got a lot of experience in juvenile health and wellness courts, as well as a background in law enforcement, so his perspective is always very valuable. And then Chaniel is the coordinator for Blackfeet Wellness Court projects. I think she's got experience, and she'll get into her experience in adult and juvenile. And she's one of the individuals I go to whenever I have a question about templates or forms or practices that she utilizes. Blackfeet's got a very good reputation within Indian country about their healing and wellness court practices. So we're excited to have them here with us today. Hopefully, we'll provide some good insight for you all. And as I stated, we're going to have more of a dialogue, a question and answer. Our guests are going to provide some personal experience, professional experience, and some best practice knowledge. So if you have any questions or comments based on what you hear today, feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. I'll go ahead and hand the mic to Chaniel, and she can give a little bit more background information about herself, and then Dave, if you want to follow up at Chaniel and provide the people with your professional and some of your personal experience as well. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. My name is Chaniel Grant. Oki Nastu Natanaku Matuyiksi Naki. I have been with the Healing Wellness Courts for the Blackfeet tribe, juvenile and adult, for almost 6 years now. My background is more of a social work background, so that's how I came into the work I'm doing now. But I've built both programs along with my community advisory circle from the ground up, so I have experience building these kinds of programs from the ground up. And I'm glad to be here today.
My name's David McArthur. I worked in law enforcement for, I'd say about 13, 14 years. I worked every position I think you could think of, from jailer, dispatcher, to corrections officer, to officer, to chief of police for two little small towns here. And then I started working for White Earth PD, and I got moved into the Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court side of things. And I've been doing that, I would say, for about 8 years or so, maybe a little bit more, a little less. So yeah, also manage our duly involved youth program in White Earth, chemical dependency program, a circle back program, which is an outpatient facility, and also the juvenile or Oshkosh inpatient facility up in Bemidji, Minnesota.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Chaniel, for providing a little bit of background information. We're thankful for you guys being here today and looking forward to hearing more about your experiences, especially Chaniel with building programs from the ground up, and Dave kind of, I guess, shifting from one part of juvenile health and wellness court to another, and all that goes along with working with different jurisdictions, as well as building those relationships. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, Antonia. So today we're going to talk about strengthening understanding between partners, maintaining long-lasting partnerships to develop juvenile healing and wellness courts, formalizing agreements to increase accountability. We'll talk about developing MOUs, I guess quasi contracts between departments, between jurisdictions, putting ideas down to paper and starting those relationships in a way where we've got expectations on both sides, or or if there's more than one partner involved, in a group setting, and then maximizing available resources for the benefit of juvenile healing and wellness court development. We'll talk about using what's around you, as well as looking at other available resources, whether that be grants or from the federal government or from your state governments. We'll talk about getting creative and trying to, increase the possibility of sustainability for your juvenile healing and wellness court. And we'll go on to the next slide and we'll get into our discussion here. So we're talking about internal partnerships as well as external partnerships. So internal is going to be support service delivery, nation building. We're talking about IHS, PD, social services, the court, schools, youth programs, and creating that network within your juvenile healing and wellness court to provide the best services possible. And essentially, promote tribal sovereignty by utilizing your government departments in a way that helps the future of your community. So I guess we'll start with Chaniel. Can you talk a little bit about, what goes into the development of a healing to wellness court, whether that be adult or juvenile, and developing those partnerships from the ground up, and kind of, I guess, getting buy-in from people who may not be aware of what the healing to wellness court model is, or are looking to get more information? Can you talk about your experience working with others that way?
Yeah, so I think building partnership, it's just that in the beginning, that's kind of the hardest part. There's a lot of footwork that goes into it. So it's a lot of going out into the community and meeting with your partners. You really got to think carefully about who you want. You got to look at the person you're going to work with and kind of think, are these people going to be effective in the giving services to your youth? Do they work well with others? Do they have a lot of connections in the community? That kind of thing kind of went into the I guess choosing who would be on our team in the beginning, because healing to wellness court is a new concept and it's a new way to do things. And especially our community, we're so used to the traditional court system that it took a lot of, I guess, developing, I guess, a vision together. So that was kind of our first step, was getting our team together, getting a small group of people together that, in the beginning, the grant was written by a group of individuals. So that kind of that foundational group that helped write the grant were the people that were there with me in the beginning, and getting, brainstorming who are our stakeholders. So that was kind of the beginning, was those sort of meetings. And then we went out into the community, and it's really about, I'd say, gather up as many people as you can and kind of do an overall presentation, like a foundational presentation about what a juvenile healing to wellness court is, what it looks like, and kind of just presenting that in the beginning. And then we really just, after that, took interest from whoever was interested to come back. We invited them to more meetings, planning meetings. But really the early stages was working with our TA provider, Dr. Paulette Runningwolf. She really was amazing in getting that going for us. She presented the community readiness assessment to us. So that was a big part of it. I could talk about that more later, but that really helped us kind of gauge, getting the community involved in the whole process. So you're getting people involved in interviewing community members, and you're also kind of creating awareness to your partners, and then the community members that you're interviewing through the process, gain that awareness because you're telling them you're working towards this common goal. You're kind of asking them for their input, I guess. And so that kind of creates buy-in, I think, the more you get your community involved, the more willing they're able to help. And also it keeps them interested. You know, they feel like they have a stake in creating this program for the community. So that keeps them really, I guess, invested in it.
Thank you, Chaniel. Can you, we'll move on to Dave. I wanted to ask you, Dave, can you talk a little bit about having your law enforcement background? I know we discussed this previously during our conversations, transitioning from, you know, a law and order perspective, being the chief of police in two different locations, and then moving on to a healing to wellness court environment. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and you know, what that was like and what your expectations were going into it?
Well, it was really kind of a difficult change to kind of begin with. You know, back when I was working law enforcement, my job was to pick people up and put them in jail, was to find the bad guys and get them put into the system and get them to find that rehabilitation, you know. But after years and years of working in these two small towns and in your community where you live, I mean, where I grew up, you started seeing that a lot of the people that we were arresting and a lot of the people that I was taking to jail were multi-generational, you know, where I've had arrested grandkids, great grandkids, grandpas, you know, dads, mothers, you know, it was just getting crazy. And so once I made the transition into juvenile wellness court, which was kind of a crazy ordeal, I just ended up having somebody come in and throw the stuff on my desk and said, get this up and get it running and figure it out. So I ended up taking it and moving with it, and came from a perspective of like, what can we do to actually try to help these kids and try to stop that multi-generational process of people going to jail and being arrested? What can we do to try to change the ways that things are going in our community? So we kind of took a look at maybe moving more towards the behavioral health aspect of things, started working more with our substance abuse partners, our mental health partners, and our biggest thing was cultural. You know, we talked about trauma earlier today a little bit in this last session. And as a law enforcement officer and working with all the people that you grew up with, I had a lot of trauma, and I was doing a lot of different things to try to deal with that trauma that wasn't right. So I went back to culture, I went back to our culture, started doing sweat lodges, started doing things like that that helped me through the process. So that's one thing that we really reached out to was to bring our culture and make that the mainstay of our program. So I guess to kind of answer your question, you know, it was a process like over time. I think it's kind of a maturity process that you look and you see, hey, what can we do to stop the problem? What can we do to try to get to the root of it and try to get things going in the right direction again? And this juvenile healing and wellness court process, when we started it and got it going, seemed to be the answer for a while. The kids, we brought them in, immersed them in our culture. We talked to them, gave them positive feedback. You know, even, you know, we did the negative stuff too. You know, we locked people up, we've done all that, but we really focused on positive feedback. When the kids were doing something right, we come in and help them out, try to get them going in the right direction, tried to get the families to jump on board, just things like that. So I hope I'm answering your question right, but yeah, it was a process. It was you know, it's hard to flip that switch and go from the prosecutor side of things to wanting to lock these kids up and teach them a lesson. That's going to teach them a lesson. Well, in time, sometimes you have to. I mean, it's just like every reaction, right? There's a action or a reaction for every action. So you'll have kids that come through the program that will push your boundaries, right? They'll push and push and push and push and push through all the least, how can I put that, all the least restrictive things. And then they finally get to the point where we might have to lock them up. And once they get there, and they go and they realize that you're kind of serious about what you're talking about, that there is a negative thing going to happen to them in the end, that there's a bad thing that's going to happen. Once they experience that, then they seem like they come back and they're like, they don't want it. They don't want that again. They want to try to figure something else out, you know, whether if it's treatment, whether if it's mental health help, whether it's cultural help, there's always something there that we try to push them down the positive path and show them that there's a difference. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dave. I have a question, and I'll ask Chaniel the same question, but I'll start with Dave. So with your law enforcement background, I've noticed you know, a little bit of difficulty overall in terms of getting buy-in from certain departments. You know, you having that advantage of being a former law enforcement officer, chief of police, how did you use that to your advantage, or leverage that, I should say, to basically get everyone on board in terms of, you know, essentially exerting your sovereignty by taking a different approach to justice within the community?
Well, a lot of times, like from the state perspective of things, is that they see the grants as a one and done or a three and done, right? We go to the state and we tell them, hey, we got this grant, and they're like, well, that'll last 3 years, and after that, what are you going to do? You know. So when it came down to us trying to get the buy-in from like the police departments, off-res, the county attorneys, state probation, and all them, we put together like a 10-minute little presentation, went to each place and talked with them and let them know that we were going to do our best to try to become sustainable, not be a three and done, not being a one and done and heading out the door. One thing I think that helped for the buy-in is, you know, in our situation, I had known the prosecutors and I've known the judges, you know, from my work I did with law enforcement. And I think they knew that I was going to stand behind what I said, because I always did. So getting that buy-in and letting them know that you're going to be here, that you're here to help, and you're going to figure out a way to try to keep this sustainable, I think is going to be a big selling point. And then the other is letting them know that you're still going to hold the kids accountable, that, yeah, we're going to do all these other things. We're going to do least restrictive, and we're going to do stuff like that. But in the end, we still have to think about that child's safety, right? So if they're not following through, if they're using hard drugs and there's different things that they're doing, and they're not giving us a chance to support them and get them going in the right path, then we have to do what we have to do to keep the child safe, right? And a lot of our kids are the same way. If we tell them that, we say, hey, this is why we have to do this. This is why you have to go to treatment. It's not because I want you to go there. It's because you're giving us no choice, because your safety is the most important thing, right? So once we told the state that we were still going to go out there and make sure that we hold the kids accountable, but we're going to do it our way, right? We're going to do it using our traditions and culture and the different things that we use day to day to try to support ourselves, to try to stay on that positive path, right? And they were really hesitant to start with, but as soon as they started seeing the kids rallying, coming to the sweat lodges, as soon as they started seeing their positivity and everything start to change, they started to buy in. And the reason that they seen these kids change is because every time we did a cultural ceremony, every time that we did something, we included everybody on our board, which consisted of our White Earth mental health, White Earth chemical dependency, White Earth ICW, state probation, the 3 counties that encompass our reservation, their law enforcement, tribal law enforcement, county attorneys. And at times we even had the judges that wanted to be a part of that sent and said, hey, I'm going to follow up and see how these kids are doing, right? So we invited them to the ceremonies. And when they came and saw our kids just pumped up to be there, they'd watch them go in to the lodge and they'd watch them come out, and you could just tell that this big, heavy thing just left them while they were in there. They bought into it. They seen that we were actually helping the kids. So, and that's kind of what pushed us to start our cultural first programming. And that's what we're doing right now. It's our culture comes first. All the state way of doing things comes in to support our culture.
That's great to hear, Dave, as well as, hearing your external partners being willing to visit and see firsthand your court programming and being able to see the successes that go along with your youth who are able to experience, different aspects of the community. Appreciate that. And Chaniel, for a similar question for you, you talked about having a social services background. Can you talk about leveraging that position within the community and building relationships, and then essentially and eventually expanding those relationships to create confidence in your program and have such a for a healing and wellness courts have long lasting sustainability since you were first granted your funds back in the mid 2010s.
Yeah, so my social work background, I really started out in like the human services field, so public assistance. So that was my job, was to kind of connect, kind of be like a broker, connecting people to their resources, working with high need people. So I had that background already. So I really knew, I guess that really helped me kind of find resources in the community. I knew where they were. I've connected people to them before. So that really did kind of help, I think, me go out into the community and kind of pull them in closer to working at the table together. So it wasn't just me being a broker anymore. I'm more out there pulling them in, putting them around the table with me to help me getting their thoughts. And also, they might not have worked together in the past. I know most of them haven't. They weren't. So I think having that structure, that really helped us, I guess, define the issue we wanted to solve. So the community helped me figure out where we wanted to go with these programs. So I guess that kind of helped expand our relationship, was them going from just me bringing a client to them to help. It was more, we're collaborating now. I'm going to help us become a team. This is, I'm going to set, I was the person they could go to also connect themselves to other people. So that kind of helped, I guess, with my social work background, and also kind of, I guess, coming from that point, that perspective, that empathetic perspective, rather than, I guess moving from the punitive part was I guess that also helped too, because, I was able to help them see, people might not have a vehicle to get to their assessments. The courts having these people go do an assessment, there's no follow through in the traditional court system. So I think that was really something they saw as valuable, was that these kind of take it a step further. So these programs take that a step further. There's more follow through. There's more compassion and empathy, I guess, and that's kind of what social work brings to the table, I think, is that empathy and compassion. And I also had no law background, so that the court really helped me get that going, I guess. They helped me understand that end of the project, and so that also helped expand our relationship, because I was relying on them too for a lot of help. I needed to understand the court system better, so I really leaned on them to help me with that too. So that was, I guess, my leverage with the social work background.
Thank you, Chaniel. And I think that's really a great representation of the potential that a healing and wellness court can have within the community. It's pretty amazing to work with grantees and see different departments having never even spoken or met each other before, despite being within the same community for several years. So I think the healing and wellness court is really an opportunity to get everyone on the same page at the table and really for the benefit of participants. Dave, did you have any follow-up comments?
And then that's absolutely true. When we started this program, I mean, you're going to need a wellness coordinator or a wellness case manager that's going to be driven a little bit. And I think we talked about this a little bit too. It's like us as Native people, we've always got to go above and beyond to try to gain the respect of other people, right? And when the state looks at you, sometimes they don't give you that respect. And, you know, we're expected to give them the respect, but we have to work a little extra hard to get ours. And that's something that with the wellness court way of doing things, when we brought everybody to the table, the very first thing that I think I brought up was like, everybody here has an equal say. Not one person is going to dictate how this goes, right? I'm not going to come in as a case manager and say, this person, this is what's going to happen to this kid, this is going to happen to this kid, this is going to happen to this kid. A judge isn't going to do that. We're all going to sit down and we're going to be equal, and we're going to talk, and we're going to visit, and we're going to work at what's the best for the best outcome of that child, right? Mental health has their say, substance abuse has their say, child welfare has theirs, the judge, everybody, law enforcement. And then we try to work it out and try to figure out what's the best plan for that kid, right? Because they're the ones that we're there for, not for ourselves, right? So that's one thing I think that we really pushed in our wellness court. And when our state partners came in, even our mental health partners, sometimes they would push certain directions and our state would push different ways. And we just had to be that person that just rallied them right back and got them back on point, right? Right back to thinking, what's our goal? What's our case plan, right? So right now, or before, everybody had a separate case plan. Substance abuse had a separate case plan, mental health, ICW, the courts. And that was the great thing about wellness court, is that we could bring all those case plans together and then work with each other, go to the same meetings together, instead of having 7 different meetings for the same issue with 7 different departments. We brought them together so we could have one meeting with one, or with the child just one time, and all the partners coming to the plate. And that really simplified things for the families. It really helped even the professionals, right? Because half the times our kids, they might love their substance abuse people, they might love their mental health people, they might love their case manager, and they can't stand the rest of anybody else. So they'll only go to certain people's meetings. But if that one person is there, then you can get them there, and then everybody can talk, and they can kind of see that everybody's on the same page. You're supporting each other. They can't manipulate the system. They can't do those types of things because we're all communicating. And if you don't have that communication, you're not going to move forward. And you got to be willing to accept everybody for who they are, even if there's someone that doesn't fit your personality or you don't fit their personality. You got to let that go and figure out how you're going to work together professionally. And once you figure that out, and once you stay driven and you remember that this is for the kids and for the families, and you're working to try to do some change for the future, it'll come easy. Once people know that that's your driving force, is that child, things will start changing for you, and it'll start getting easier as time goes on.
Thank you, Dave. We've got some additional questions here, just food for thought. Again, if anyone has any questions, comments, feel free to use the chat, raise your hand for Dave or Chaniel. There are TYRC peer mentors, coordinators within their respective communities. I guess this next question is for Chaniel. When you talked about developing those relationships, you see bullet point number 2, who's involved? Who were the ones that you really prioritized in terms of making that connection and really seeing them as integral to the success of your healing to wellness courts?
So I really think like in the beginning, your community data really helps you see who needs to be involved. And then who, you might not have that person in your community. So that's kind of where you got to come together with the rest of the stakeholders in the community to try to meet that gap. But you got to do what you have to do with what resources you have. So I think using your data, like when I say data, go to your court system, find, how many assessments have been completed, who referred defendants to treatment, how many of those were followed through, finding that. I guess that was an area that we saw really needed to be improved. There was really no communication after that initial referral. So, and the defendants were kind of left up it was up to them to follow through. Even finding that resource, they were more or less like, go get an assessment. And what we're finding is these people don't know where to go. They don't know how to get started. So using your data and your, talking to the community and finding those gaps really help find who needs to be there. Community mapping too. I guess that's part of a strategic planning. Sorry, was there somebody asking a question?
I don't believe so. If you're not speaking,
Okay.
can you please make sure your microphone's muted out of respect for our guests? Thank you.
So community mapping is part of the strategic planning process with OJJDP, or it was in the past. That really helped us see who we have in the community, and then finding where the need is. So I think for the juvenile project, the school system was a huge partner that we really needed to be on the team. There was a big push even with them. There was trauma-informed care was starting to come into the picture. There, the alternative high school was formed. They were trying to deal with better ways to deal with, school delinquency and substance use issues with kids, even addiction. So getting them on board because they had all these resources. You would even believe your school system has, a majority of the resources you need for your youth. So, there was the school-based clinic, the clinic had their own LAC. Their counseling center was kind of ramping things up, and just the idea of an alternative high school being in the community and seeing their success, and it kind of helped other school systems or the other schools in the community kind of start thinking, how can we be more flexible? How can we have more, strength-based approaches to learning, and how can we collaborate more in the community? So I think that really helped. It was just kind of a community push to connect, I guess, as a community. So your school system's a huge piece, and your treatment system. The adults here, we have an inpatient facility, Crystal Creek Lodge. It's got really limited beds, but they also can refer out. So I guess just that community mapping piece is really important to kind of see who's involved, who can be involved, who needs to be at the table with you to make the connect your people to what they need, what their needs are.
You brought up an excellent point about data. We're going to be having a data presentation at our enhancement training in Albuquerque. Just a quick plug there. But I think you're right, Chaniel, in terms of finding what's already out there in order to game plan without necessarily having to reinvent the wheel. And then I'll pass the baton to Dave here. I think he's got some follow-up comments.
Kind of like she was saying, is that expanding, you know, when you first start, you probably locate maybe 2 or 3, 4 different programs that you think should be a part of it. And then all of a sudden you start realizing, like Chaniel was saying, the schools, what about the schools? They'd be a good partnership. What about the Boys and Girls Club? They'd be a good partnership. What about elementary schools? You know, we were focusing on 15, 16-year-old kids, and we found out that we have 12 and 11 and 5-year-olds that are 5-year-olds smoking weed, and 12 and 13-year-olds that are doing harder drugs than that. So, you know, it's always that ability just to kind of expand and do your forethinking and looking and adapting to what the community needs are too. And like Chaniel said, the schools are a good way of doing that. They're the ones that opened our eyes up to the kids that are 5 years old that they were referring into our program that are smoking marijuana. And it's like, it still just blows my mind to this day. And it's been 2-3 years since that's happened, you know, and we've had kids coming into these programs, or not into our juvenile wellness, but in our chemical dependency. But we turned around and tried to figure out a way, how can we adapt our juvenile healing wellness court to be responsive to those people too, to be able to put our resources out and try to be able to help those kids that are 5 years old that aren't criminally being charged. How can we adapt that, right? So we've been working on different things to try to do prevention and outreach and different things to younger kids into the communities, different things like that, you know. So you got to always have that willingness to expand, always have that forethinking about how can I bring these services and try to catch these kids before they end up in the juvenile system, right? Because that's the last thing that we want. The last thing we want them to do is go to juvenile. So we have to start looking earlier, and how can we adapt our program to fit that? And I think the one way we did it is we moved our program underneath behavioral health and out of our court system. So once we made that transition, then that opened up our doors a little bit more. That opened it up to sustainability with billing. It opened up to being able to reach out to these younger kids that were 5 and 7 and 8 and 10 that weren't committing crimes, and trying to catch them before they got to that point in their life.
Thank you, Dave. And just to clarify, the baton I referenced was the track and field baton, not the law and order baton. So, but just to follow up, can you specify, you're talking about being creative with your programming and trying to reach a younger participant base. Can you specify what that programming looks like? I know that's one of the big questions a lot of our grantees have, is what age range to focus on. You know, we've got communities who focus on 14 to 21, 12 to 21, consider 10 to 21. Some of our grantees have codes that have juvenile jurisdiction over, you know, youth as young as 6 years old. In what ways were you able to get creative with your programming to reach that younger participant base?
One, we didn't put down a specific age group, right? We didn't say that we're going to focus on, well, at first we did, I can't lie. At first we did. We said we're going to focus on 12 to 18-year-olds. Well, then the drinking age is 21, and the adult courts, or the courts, were sending us kids that were under 21 because in their mind it's considered a juvenile offense because it's under the age of 21, so underage consumption. So that started falling on us. So we started doing some stuff like working with that, and then it just started to go lower and lower and lower and lower with age, because we seen the need, right? We were tied into the community. You see that the need is there, and you got to try to figure out something to be able to adapt and move. So that's kind of what we did. We started that partnership with the schools. We go in and have weekly meetings with the schools, weekly or bi-weekly meetings with the schools, to find out who they're having issues with, how we can provide the services, or even if they don't come through our juvenile healing and wellness court, it's how can we get them engaged in other services to get them the help that they need, right? Like chemical dependency, mental health, or even my big push is culture. We always go to where substance abuse is here to do the substance abuse, and mental health is do the mental health, but our culture is taking care of that our whole lives, right? If you look back at everything, our culture is what got the people through to where we are today. And we're not utilizing that, and we need to get back to that. And then the other thing that we have to look at is this generation that we're dealing with right now, in-person contact they don't like it. They don't like to sit and have somebody ask them questions. They're embarrassed to answer the questions. They're embarrassed to share their emotions. But boy, you get them on the internet or you get them in a chat, they just tell you everything, because you're not really a person to them anymore, right? You're their technology. It's what they're into. And that's one thing I think our case managers have utilized a lot, is that text messaging, or not really text messaging, but messaging. And I think that's one thing that we're going to try to move to, like in our groups and different things that we do at our building, is our IT department to come up with a app or something for the kids to interact with. So when we're up front and we're talking to the kids about substance abuse issues, we're talking to them about trauma, we're talking to them about those things, they can jump on their iPads that we can give them, or iPods. I don't even know what the cool thing is anymore. I'm so old, but they can get on there, type on that stuff, pop it up on the screen, and it'll be anonymous. And then that answer to the question or their concern, their trauma, their substance abuse issues, all that stuff can be answered right in the group, and they don't have to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to know about this. They could just text it up there. And it's really crazy. You watch these kids nowadays and they don't want to talk. They just want to type. They just want to text. They just want to do those types of things. So, like I said, it's just, you got to stay in tune with what the kids need. You got to stay in tune with your culture, and you got to make sure that they, you adapt your programming to fit their needs, and I think our case managers, I don't know if they're on here watching or anything, but I think they'll come out and tell you, 90% of our communication is messenger, text messaging, any type of internet chat, they'll talk. But boy, when you go to talk to them face to face, they just lock right up, So.
Thank you, Dave. Sir, you can't be that old. You figured out the Zoom audio button and the video button, so.
That was help from Anna too, I think.
Thank you again, Anna. Chaniel, we're going to move on to maintaining partnerships, gaining trust. And I know Dave had touched on, working with outside jurisdictions, maybe those who may not be as familiar with the practices within the community in terms of a cultural perspective and what you're offering to your participants in the Healing to Wellness Court. Can you talk a little bit about, even within the community, introducing people to different approaches to handling justice, and from a cultural perspective, and gaining that respect and that trust within the partners, to have them believe in a different approach to handling, what would usually be handled in the trial court.
Yeah, I think coming in, you've got to kind of, that's the big thing, is kind of getting everybody to, I guess, think outside the box. You have to remind people, you got to get them in that team mindset. So kind of like, I guess, when they're first coming into this role, you got to realize you're part of a bigger team, that everyone has a role, and to respect that role. And then just valuing valuing that everybody has a different perspective, valuing that diversity, I guess. So The way we did that really was, in the beginning, we kind of had some team building kickoff events. So like the community came and helped. We also did a lot of cultural forums with our elders in the community because we really wanted that guidance from our cultural leaders and our elders, so that we're reaching out to every area in our we were trying to be really mindful of like the medicine wheel. So mental health, emotional, spiritual, so all of that, we were trying to cover all of those areas. So I think just also those team building exercises, I think getting everybody in a room and introducing them and then having them do exercises together, I think really helps. People might, people talk in the community, and it could kind of be, I guess, kind of cutthroat in the beginning because people are, this program's not doing this program's not doing this. So you kind of got to break those barriers down, those communication barriers. So I think getting them all together in the beginning and doing something fun, like go out and plan a community event. We were involved in a lot of the street dances in the community too. So going to the football game bonfires and serving the kids hot dogs as a team, that kind of stuff, that really helps you kind of build that outside the box or outside the office relationship, because that is important. You want to be friends with the people you're working with. You want to have that respect. So I think getting your team outside of that, outside of the court, outside of the office, that in a new environment, that really helps to build that trust and communication and that respect between teams.
Just a follow-up, Chaniel. I mean, I guess I personally moved from prosecution, as you guys know, to more of a role to address recidivism and healing the wellness. Can you talk about that amount of time it took to, I guess, work with people to get removed from that trial court mentality and look at it more as a team, multidisciplinary team, and that level playing field of respect among community members? Was there any speed bumps along the way, and what did you do to address those when they happened?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of been ongoing. So we went through a number of judges. I think the chief judge position, there was a new judge in there like every 2 years. So you have to go back to the beginning and that was a huge speed bump for us in the beginning, was trying to get a new judge to embrace this concept, and keeping the team together to be a unified front in front of the judge, just to show the new judge that you guys are working together, you've been working together, you're a team. That was, I guess, the big piece in the beginning, was just keeping the judges educated on a new judge, I guess. A lot of the judges were really hesitant in the beginning. I guess especially the judges who were a part of the old alternative court. So we did have an alternative court back in the 90s. And it was a great program. It helped a lot of people, but there was just what I think lacked in that program was there was no community buy-in like we have. So it was basically the court kind of just they kind of siloed themselves, and there wasn't more like this outreach we're doing now. So that was kind of a big speed bump there, was trying to get the judge to understand that we're going to take those lessons from the past, and we're going to learn from them this time. We're going to let us show you we can do this. Getting that communication with the judge and just working with them, I think, was in the beginning was really important. But you got to really be firm as a team, and trying to get people to understand, like, we developed this vision together as a community, and this program is built on, not the work of one person, it's all of us together. So just keeping your team really, and I've had team members come with me to the judge to explain, this has been going on. Let us show you how this works. And I think even as a team, showing your team, people get hung up on the graduation rates of your program, especially in the beginning. You're not going to have the most perfect record of graduates. You're going to have people fail. You're going to have people, terminations happen. But you got to remind them of how, progress is also connecting people to treatment, So you got to keep track of that too. Keep track of your successes along the way, and don't get hung up on the end result. There's a lot of success along the way, not just that end result. There's little things that happen to get there. So keeping track of that and reminding your people, that there are challenges, but there's things that are coming with these challenges that we're overcoming along the way. I hope I answered that.
You did. And I will say having a solid policies and procedures is also helpful for communication. I know I utilize Blackfeet's a lot in sharing, what a model or template could look like. So I imagine that, providing that information to new staff or, new court employees will give them a better idea of what the expectations are, because those policies and procedures were developed in a multidisciplinary team setting. So thank you for that, Chaniel. Go ahead.
Yep. Just having that, remember, you don't got to reinvent the wheel with that either. There's tons of examples out there. So we actually we took a lot from the old alternative court model, and that was our template in the beginning. So I think having a template to work from and working on that together. But yeah, the policies and procedures, having that in place, and then getting your tribal council, your leadership to support that policies and procedures. We did that by presenting them. We involved them in that process. So it went through the whole process of being reviewed by the tribe's legal department, and they formally approved them through a resolution. So getting that in place and getting your manual at least recognized by your leadership, I think, is really important too.
Thank you. And Dave, I wanted to follow up on one of your discussion points earlier about bringing in county and state officials to witness firsthand your efforts and the impact it's having on your youth. The reality is there's going to be a lot of cultural incompetency, or lack of understanding in terms of even a government structure of tribes, not understanding what tribal sovereignty is, not understanding that tribes do a lot of the similar things as other municipalities, other governments, except with limited resources and limited staff. So arguably do it better. Can you talk about, I guess, building that respect with individuals who may not have that awareness of, your government structure, or even your cultural practices, and the effort that goes into, getting people on the same page to build that trust within your programming?
I think a lot of it when we first started was starting small. Like when we'd have our meetings, I never told the state participants that, hey, before every meeting, we're going to smudge and we're going to have a prayer and we're going to have our elder in here giving some stories or anything like that. They showed up. Everybody started smudging and we handed them the bowl, and they're kind of looking at us like, oh, can we do this? And they're like, yeah, go for it, So then they go and they were smudging away. And I think a lot of it too is that they have a lot of insecurities, I guess, too. We look at certain things sometimes and we're like, when people are uncomfortable with something, we assume it's because they don't respect what we do, but sometimes it's just because they don't have the understanding, right? So we always brought in a teacher or a how could I put that, a elder that come in, and when we smudged, he explained to them what it was about cleansing yourself, cleansing your mind, and getting into a good area and to get moving forward and to make the best decisions. And he always reiterated like kind of what I'm saying right now. It's about the kid, you know, and it's not about state, it's not about tribe. We're here together to work as a team and to respect each other. So having that spiritual person there for the first year or two was like the best thing we ever did. He was able to communicate with everybody when there was some hiccups coming. He would address it. We'd hit it head on. We just didn't dance around it. You know, we went right directly to him and said, hey, this is the way we feel. When you come into our program and you're talking about our impoverished Native people and our poor people and all this stuff, you know, that's derogatory, you know, and let them understand that's the way that we feel. That's what we get from them when they say things like that. And sometimes they didn't even realize they were offending someone, right? So we just kind of hit it head on. And it's like anything else. We worked hard for respect, but we demanded the respect back, you know? And we worked hard at trying to meet in the middle and building a team. And it actually got so good, and I don't know if I should, whatever, but there's a video on YouTube called No More, where our state partners are on there talking about our program and our cultural practices and how it has really helped the youth. You know, they seen it. We'd have a sweat lodge. We'd tell them, hey, come to the sweat lodge. Well, I don't want to go in. Well, that's fine. Just come sit by the fire, you know, or come sit at a distance just to kind of see what it's about. And then that spiritual person would tell them, you know, you can get the same effects from being at that fire as if you're inside, you know. And then he talked to him about how you talk in your mind and let it out and let it go into the fire. Explained it to him. Pretty soon we had people showing up, sitting by the fire. I've had Becker County deputies in the sweat lodge. I've had, I've had probation officers come into the sweat lodge at state probation. They come sit by the fire every once in a while. Back in it, you know, when our cultural program was really moving forward, and it was really cool to see. And then I think they started seeing how the kids respected them then, right? Because they would start dealing with a kid and that kid would just totally defy them. But then when they saw that probation officer, that county officer, whoever sitting at the lodge and participating with them, then they started giving them a little bit of respect. And then I think they saw how they were gaining that respect, and it just started kind of snowballing. I guess it's what you say, you know, attack something with positivity and you'll have positive outcomes. And I think that's the main thing, is you got to be positive, put it out there. You can't force them to go, but just support them. Say, yeah, come check it out. If they don't want to, that's on them, you know, but at least just put it out there, be respectful over it, and make sure they feel welcome, I guess, is the main thing. And then on the other side of things, when we talk about sovereignty and talking about what we do on the tribal end of things, we also got to demand in a good way, not come in there and just pointing your finger and saying, this is our sovereign right. You come in and point these things out and say, hey, you know, this is why this has happened, and give some history on it and move forward and make sure that you're doing things for the best of the tribe and of the tribal people, not just because the state is telling you you're not going to be a participant if you don't do this or don't do that. That makes sense. I hope it does, but
makes sense, Dave. Thank you for that. Your words of encouragement on positivity. I appreciate it. We're going to move forward. This presentation is going to be available. We've got some resources in previous slides. We're going to save some room to do our exercise with Laura But I did want to give our guests an opportunity to provide some brief closing thoughts or words of advice or words of encouragement to our grantees, those who are just getting their courts off the ground or just starting with planning and implementation, maybe don't have extensive experience in the healing to wellness court model. What's your advice to them moving forward, and best wishes to them?
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'd say the one thing is to celebrate the small things. Make sure that you celebrate the small things, celebrate the people that are there, do things together, like Chaniel was saying. Celebrate the little things. Not everybody is going to graduate. Not everybody's going to be the perfect citizen and go off and become a lawyer and a doctor and all that kind of stuff. Look at the small things. If you can get them to reduce the amount of stuff they're using, if you can get them to graduate high school, get their GED, if you can get that positive path started, then hopefully more positive things will come. More things will happen for their kids trying to outdo dad because dad or mom got their GED or their high school education, right? Then next thing they're going to take the next step to college. So you just got to look at those little things, celebrate the little things, be positive, and don't take the failures personal. It is what it is. The Creator's got his path, and people got to walk their path, and we're just here to try to get them going on a good way. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I just, there's a Blackfeet word. It's igakimat. It means try hard. You just got to keep in mind you're not alone. You have people out there that are going to be willing to help you. Don't think you got to reinvent the wheel. Reach out for help. There's tons of resources out, outside of your community too, that you can reach for. But just remember, you develop that vision, I guess, together as a community, and really try to build your programs from your community's I guess values and customs, so that you own it together. But igakima.
I actually got a text. I don't know, Anna, how much time do we have? We have some questions in the chat.
We can address a couple of questions. I think we have a closing from a guest today, so I don't think they're in the room yet, so we have time to address a couple questions.
Okay, great. We've got one from Joe Aganash. How can you get the family involved when they are struggling with their own addictions and trauma? Any suggestions, Dave or Chaniel? Family involvement?
Be supportive. When you're working with the youth or you're working with the kid that's in their family, I always was told it's like crabs in a bucket. People try to drag people back down. And I think you got to go into their households with the thought process of that you're there to help, and you're there to provide that kid a safer place and support the family. If they want to talk to you about addiction, talk to them about it. Just let them know that you're there for them too. You know what I mean? And that you can provide help. I've had one individual whose kids came through the program. She saw that her kids were doing good and wanted to follow suit, and she, I got her hooked up with all the services she needed, and everything went well. But it's not going to be like that with every family. Just try to support them, provide the services that you can to them, offer, to help them if they need the help too, because that might help you with your issue of helping their kid find a better positive way. So just offer them the supports.
Yep, that connection, that empathy and compassion, and just being supportive, and being real with them, and I feel like once they get involved in the program and see the support system, because you know, you are going to have those youth that don't have that family connection. So you have to be that connection. So I think just their parents seeing that too in the end, that kind of brings them, that it kind of feels safe to them at that point, that they're not going to be judged either. So just having that, like Dave said, that compassion and respect, and making sure you're, you know, the families know you're there to help, and you're not there to punish them for suffering from substance use disorder. And even using that kind of language, you know, not calling, being careful with how you, you know, you don't want to call people addicts. You don't want to use that kind of language. Just being really trauma informed too, I think will help families connect with the team.
Looks like we've got a comment from Judge Blake about his Healing to Wellness Court using prior graduates as a mentor, using youth for their wisdom on program success. I think that's critical as well, especially when considering, you know, as Dave stated, it would be foolish to go in and think everything is going to be perfect. You know, there are going to be hiccups, but then at the same time, highlighting the successes, making sure the individuals who were able, you know, to graduate, go through the phases, have a voice, in hoping that, you know, that success can be recreated. And luckily, as Jenny stated, they haven't gotten that far yet. You know, some of our longer tenured Healing to Wellness courts have been in a position to have, you know, multiple success stories, and therefore, you know, sharing those stories with the community.
In the past, we had tried that, and it has worked, where we've had kids come through and successfully graduate, and we brought them back. Like, we started a program to where the kids that were in the program could go do an event, like a sober type event with the kids that had graduated, you know, so they kind of got to talk a little bit, and they could share their experiences. There's certain things I can't share with them because of all the HIPAA stuff and everything, or confidentiality. But when we had these little weekend events, dances, different things like that, we put them together, and then, yeah, they started talking about things, and it just kind of built from there. So that was just one way that we tried to do it.
Thank you again, Dave and Chaniel, for joining us. I think we've got some announcements. Anna or Laura.
I just wanted to share again a thank you to Dave and Chaniel, and we'll have a continued conversation with them tomorrow. Continued conversations about court coordination. So thank you for sharing your insights on partnerships today. And I heard a lot of really good things. I think the informal partnerships being just as important as some of those external partnerships. And I know we can go further into conversation about some of the logistics and administrative side of that. And fortunately, we have more examples of actual MOUs or partnership agreements if you're needing that. So we're going to be sending out the materials afterward. There'll be some examples of agreements in there. And then Dave and Chaniel are part of our team and here to support as well. So we can get you connected if you want more information about their work in the court. And I did see a couple of more comments about working with families. Consistency with the families helps gain their trust and sticking to your word. And then I think that was our last comment. And then I shared a resource about peer mentoring. So thank you for bringing that up. We haven't focused a lot on that in much of our training yet, but I think we're seeing a broadening of the youth peer support and how that can be integrated into your program. And then I think we've also seen recently some tribal juvenile healing to wellness courts that are integrating youth peer circle and just youth court generally. So we've seen some really unique partnerships with youth in the community and really trying to lift each other up and be a support to each other. So I think that's really awesome. We can share more about that tomorrow. So I want to just remind you all, we have a whole day tomorrow and we welcome you back. I want to hand it off to Laura. She's going to help us kind of reground ourselves for the day. And then we are going to have a closing by one of our Tribal Youth Resource Center ambassadors. So I just want to say thank you again to Dave and Chaniel and Jacob and all of our other presenters today. And then to all of you, because I think we still have a pretty good number of participants that stuck with us most of the day. So thank you.
I'd love to echo Anna and just say thank you, everyone. Thank you for all of our wonderful presenters, Chaniel and Dave, for all the wisdom you just shared with us, and for everyone who's dedicated their day to being here. We appreciate you. And one logistical note before we move into our grounding, the Zoom link for tomorrow will be the same. So we just have one Zoom link for all of today and tomorrow. So I just wanted to clarify that, so there's no confusion in that area. As Anna noted, Sam Schimmel will be joining us in a few minutes to close us out, one of our amazing youth ambassadors. And until then, right now, we'll come into our last grounding activity of the day, practice some more breathing. So for this exercise, I invite you to just sort of notice how you're sitting first. Are you comfortable? Do you maybe, if you've been sitting a long time, would you like to stand up for this? If that's not accessible, you know, is there a way that you can sort of shift in your chair maybe to get a little bit more comfortable? If there's a seat back you could lean into, anything that you can do right now to give yourself a little bit more comfort. And would also like to invite everyone to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. For this breathing, you can also keep them open if you prefer. I'll close my eyes and let's begin to notice again just how the breath is moving in the body, and begin to breathe a little bit more deeply. And right now, we're going to send breath on the inhale down into our belly. Sometimes our breath can be really shallow. I know this happens to me, and kind of get stuck in our chest. And so right now, we're going to send our breath all the way down into the belly and feel the breath expanding in all directions. So if you'd like, I invite you to bring your hands to your belly, and then maybe move them a little bit onto your sides. And then as you inhale, feel for breathing in through the nose, sending breath down and feeling the sides of the abdomen moving outwards, kind of like a beach ball is expanding in all sides. So not just sending breath forward and back, but feel for even breathe into both hands on your sides. Feel them expanding outwards. So take a few breaths like this, and you can stay with my voice or feel free to breathe at your own pace. Don't want to create any strain here. So just as deep as is comfortable for you right now in this moment. And take a deep breath in through the nose, feeling the sides expanding, and then breathing out naturally when it's comfortable. So not holding the breath here. Just feeling for breathing in and out deeply, but also comfortably. Nothing we have to do right now. And take another deep breath in. And letting the breath out. Now feel for letting the hands fall to the sides. And begin to notice your feet. Bringing attention to the feet. Maybe they're on the floor. Maybe some people are outside. You can actually feel the earth underneath your feet. If you're sitting cross-legged, that's okay too. Just beginning to bring the attention downwards. Feeling roots coming out, down through the feet, moving into the earth. Like roots forming. And sinking in deeper. And if it feels good, maybe just feel for releasing any energy from the day that's not needed anymore. Releasing that down through the feet to be held by the earth. Noticing if you can also receive any new energy that wants to come in. Whatever it is that's needed right now. Whether that's calmness, a little bit of kind of bright energy. You're going to gear up for the rest of the day. Just whatever's needed. Taking another breath here. Notice if the face is holding tension. You can let the jaw be soft. Letting the shoulders sink down if there's tension there. And finally, feeling almost as if there was someone very gently pulling up on the top of your head, feeling the spine lengthening up, moving towards the sky. And very slowly, we'll begin to come back, feeling those roots coming back up from the earth into your feet, bringing the awareness up into the heart. You're welcome to bring a hand to the heart if you'd like, or you can keep your hands on your lap. Just taking a few breaths here. Noticing the breath in the heart. Feeling gratitude. To all of the amazing human beings in this space right now that's shared, and for yourself. And as you're ready, begin to open the eyes if they're closed. Maybe making any little movements that feel good, shaking out the hands, moving the legs, anything that the body is asking for. And now we'll begin to transition into our closing, and I am really excited to introduce you all to Sam Schimmel, who is joining us to close us out for the day. I know we've been on here for a long day. I don't even know, this is 7 hours. I don't know. I'm not sure how long. It's been a long time. We've been all on this screen. So Sam serves as a youth ambassador with us. He's been with us since we started this program over a year now, and I'll just share a little bit about Sam. So Sam is St. Lawrence Island, Siberian Yupik and Kenichi Indian. He's experienced firsthand how climate change impacts food security in Arctic communities. In 2018, Sam was appointed by the governor of Alaska to serve on the state of Alaska's climate action leadership team, where he helped craft the state's policy on climate change. He continues to support climate awareness and education as an advisory board member for the Center for Native American Youth and is the co-chair of the board of directors for the Arctic Youth Network. In 2021, Sam launched Operation Fish Drop, a program which sought to give urban Native populations access to traditional foods during the COVID-19 pandemic. He's just started law school at Georgetown in the last week or two. Sam, I'll let you clarify that. And just as a personal note, Sam is absolutely phenomenal. He's brilliant, he's kind, dedicated, and just really always shows up for us and has a lot of wisdom to share. So Sam, I will pass it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Laura, and hello, everybody. You know, I was thinking about, in preparation, thinking about kind of some of the things and some of the wisdom that's been placed with me by my elders and by other community members. And I was reminded of the words of an elder. I can't remember if she was from Point Hope or I don't quite remember where she was from, but we were sitting around and we were talking about the dire state of salmon in Alaska. The reality that we're watching one of our foods that we've relied on since time immemorial disappear. And everybody was kind of sad in the meeting, and she pipes up and she says, you know, when I was a little girl, we hunted a lot of caribou. That's what we ate. We were caribou people. But as I grew older, we didn't have as many caribou anymore. And we were a little bit hungry. But we had moose. Moose started coming into our community. Moose started to pop up. And then we became moose people. And now we hunt moose. And that's what we eat. And in her words, she was talking about the reality that this is for the reality that when we're presented with hardships, when we're presented with difficulties, if we don't see the opportunities in them, we go hungry. We won't hunt our moose. We'll keep looking at the caribou disappearing. And so today, let's focus on those caribou. Let's focus on the things that we can improve upon. Let's acknowledge the things that are the way that they are, and focus on the places where we can have the most impact, and focus on the ways that we can improve the lives of our young people in our tribes. You know, in the same vein, I was just at well, not just, but at the Unity Conference in June, or July rather, and they brought us up on stage, and I looked out over the people that were in the auditorium, and there was about, I don't know, 1,600, 1,700 Native kids sitting down, and I thought to myself, wow, the totality of the experiences that the people in this room have had would be overpowering for any other group. The bad things that have happened in our lives would be incomprehensible to the general population. But look at us now, we're all laughing, we're having a good time, and we're happy. And so while there's bad, there will always be good. And it is that good that we have to focus on, and it's that good that I hope that everybody takes away from today. I know conversations can sometimes be difficult and they can be hard, but it's really about what we bring home for our peoples. And so what you learn today, don't let it sit in your mind. Make sure that it gets out, make sure that it's implemented, make sure that those conversations start and those ideas are made into programs, and that our young people are better served by them. So thank you all for joining the meeting, and thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate those good words, and I hope all of you have a great evening and that we see you bright and early tomorrow. So have a good night, get some rest, go get some dinner, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.